welcome back to Prime Wealth. It's great to have you here with us today.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure.
So, if you've been keeping an eye on the news lately, you might have heard a lot of buzz around student loan forgiveness updates.
Right. It's such a hot topic right now.
Yeah, and it's not just about student loans, but how these changes could really impact your financial strategy, especially if you're someone planning for retirement or thinking about your long-term goals.
Exactly. We're going to break down what's happening and how it can affect your financial landscape, whether you have student loans or not.
We'll also touch on some practical steps you can take to navigate these changes and how to set yourself up for financial success moving forward.
And don't worry, we'll keep it relatable and straightforward.
So stick around as we dive into this important topic.
Let's get started.
So Alex, let's dive into why this whole student loan forgiveness situation is really important for our listeners, especially those over 40.
Absolutely, Jordan. Many people in this age group might think, well, I've already paid off my loans or my kids are out of college, but it's not just about personal loans. The ripple effects of student debt impact us all, especially when we consider how it affects the economy and retirement planning.
Right. I've talked to friends who are still paying off their student loans well into their 40s and 50s. That can really take a toll on their ability to save for retirement, right?
Exactly. Think about it. If you're juggling a monthly student loan payment, that's money you can't put into your retirement account. The longer you're paying off loans, the more it affects your financial health down the line.
And let's not forget about inflation. It's been a hot topic lately. With prices rising, that debt burden feels even heavier.
Yes! Inflation can erode purchasing power, making it even tougher to allocate funds for retirement or emergencies. According to recent studies, individuals with student loans are less likely to save for retirement. They're often focused on paying off that debt instead.
That's a staggering statistic. So it can lead to delayed retirement plans or even people having to work longer than they initially intended, right?
Exactly. And it's not just about the financial aspect. There's an emotional side, too. The stress of carrying that debt can lead to anxiety and affect overall well-being. I've spoken with clients who, despite having decent salaries, feel trapped by their loans.
Yes, I can imagine. It's like this constant weight on their shoulders. And here's something interesting. A lot of folks over 40 also have kids who might be in college or graduating soon.
Right, and that can create a whole new layer of complexity. Parents might be looking at their own financial health while also trying to support their kids financially. It's a balancing act.
I've seen this firsthand. A friend of mine took on extra debt to help her daughter through school. Now she's feeling the pinch herself, and it's hard for her to set aside money for retirement.
That's a classic scenario. It creates this cycle where, instead of preparing for the future, you're constantly reacting to the present. You end up postponing your own financial goals, which can lead to regret later on.
And we can't forget about the recent economic trends. Interest rates have been on the rise, which affects everything from mortgage rates to credit card debt. So if someone is already juggling student loans, higher interest rates can make that even tougher.
Spot on, Jordan. If you're in a position where you're managing multiple debts, rising interest rates can feel like a double whammy. It's essential for anyone over 40 to reassess their financial strategies regularly, especially in this climate.
So what does this mean for our listeners? They might be thinking, how do I navigate this?
Well, first, it's crucial to stay informed about any potential student loan forgiveness programs that could apply to them. There have been changes and updates, and knowing what's available can make a significant difference.
And it's not just about forgiveness, right? It's also about understanding the impact of that debt on their overall financial picture.
Exactly. A lot of people may not realize how their student loans fit into their broader financial strategy. For example, if someone is nearing retirement, they need to consider how any remaining debt could affect their cash flow in those years.
It's all about planning ahead. They might need to adjust their retirement timeline or savings goals based on their current debt situation.
Absolutely. And, I often encourage clients to look at their budgets. Finding areas where they can cut back can free up cash to tackle those loans more aggressively.
Right, and that can alleviate some of the stress. If they can reduce those monthly payments, they can feel a little more secure financially.
Yes, and having a solid plan in place can also help emotionally. Knowing that they're making progress can be a huge relief, especially if they have a clear strategy to manage their loans.
So it sounds like the key here is to not only focus on the loans, but also on how they fit into the bigger financial picture.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. Understanding the implications of student debt, especially for those over 40, can empower them to make informed decisions.
That's a good point. It's about taking control of your financial future. And for those who are feeling overwhelmed, it might be a good idea to reach out to a financial advisor, right?
Definitely. A professional can help create a tailored plan that addresses both immediate needs and long-term goals.
So for our listeners, it's not just about the loans. It's about their entire financial landscape.
Well said. So as we shift gears here, let's talk about some practical strategies for navigating this complex issue, especially for those looking to build long-term security. So when we talk about student loan forgiveness, one of the most important things is understanding the different programs available. It can feel overwhelming, but breaking it down into manageable pieces really helps.
Absolutely. There are a few main programs, right? For example, public service loan forgiveness is a big one.
Exactly. If you work for a qualifying employer, like a government agency or a nonprofit, you can potentially have your loans forgiven after making 120 qualifying payments.
And those payments have to be on a qualifying repayment plan, right?
Yes, that's crucial. You need to be on an income-driven repayment plan or a standard repayment plan. Some folks think they can just make any payment and it counts, but that's not the case.
Right. Another thing to keep in mind is that you have to have direct loans to qualify for many of these forgiveness programs. If you have FFEL or Perkins loans, you might need to consolidate into direct loans first.
Exactly. And this is where it can get a bit tricky. When you consolidate, you might lose credit for payments you've already made under your old loans. So it's really important to weigh the pros and cons.
Definitely a balancing act. Now, what about teachers and nurses? I've heard there are specific forgiveness programs aimed at them.
Yes, there are specific programs like the Teacher Loan Forgiveness Program. If you teach in a low-income school for 5 consecutive years, you could qualify for forgiveness up to $17,500.
That's significant. And nurses have options too, right?
Absolutely. Many states offer forgiveness programs for nurses who work in underserved areas or for specific healthcare organizations. It's worth checking what's available in your state.
So how do people find out about these options?
A good starting point is to visit the Federal Student Aid website. They have a lot of resources that break down the different programs. Also, many universities and colleges have financial aid offices that can help guide you.
That's a great tip. And once you know which program fits your situation, what's the next step?
Well, it's all about staying organized. You need to keep track of your payments, any correspondence with loan servicers, and make sure you're meeting all the requirements for the program you're pursuing.
What about using tools or apps? Are there any you recommend for managing all this?
Yes. There are a few budgeting apps out there that can help you track payments and even remind you when they're due. Some popular ones are Mint, YNAB, or even specific loan management apps. Just find one that you feel comfortable with.
And what about checking in on your loan servicer? How often should you do that?
Regular check-ins are key. I'd recommend at least once a year. Make sure your information is up to date, especially if you change jobs or your income shifts. Keeping that line of communication open can help avoid any nasty surprises down the road.
That makes sense. Now, you mentioned income-driven repayment plans earlier. Can you explain those a bit more?
Sure. These plans adjust your monthly payments based on your income and family size. The goal is to make your payments more manageable. After 20 to 25 years of qualifying payments, any remaining balance can be forgiven.
That's a long time, though. What should someone do if they're not sure they can stick it out that long?
It's a valid concern. It's important to have a backup plan. You might consider aggressively paying down your loans if you're in a better financial position, or exploring refinancing options if you have good credit.
Right, so refinancing can be a double-edged sword, too.
Exactly. If you refinance federal loans into private loans, you lose access to federal forgiveness programs and income-driven repayment options. So you really have to think it through.
What about those who are struggling to make payments? Should they just wait it out?
Not necessarily. If you're having trouble, reach out to your loan servicer immediately. They can often help set you up with a deferment or forbearance. Just remember, interest can still accrue during those periods.
That's important to keep in mind. And if someone is nearing retirement, should they be worried about their student loans?
It can be a concern, but there are options. If your loans are forgiven due to income-driven repayment plans, you might not need to worry as much. But if not, it's crucial to have a plan for how you'll handle them in retirement.
So it all comes back to planning and being proactive.
Exactly. And it's never too late to start. It's about understanding your options and making informed choices.
And I think that's a great segue into the common pitfalls people might run into when navigating these forgiveness programs.
Absolutely, there are definitely some traps you want to avoid.
You know, Alex, with all the changes in student loan forgiveness programs lately, I think it's important to talk about some common pitfalls people might fall into.
Absolutely, Jordan. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of potential forgiveness and overlook some crucial aspects that can lead to mistakes.
Right. So what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes people make?
One major pitfall is not keeping track of their repayment status or their loan servicer. You know, borrowers often ignore the paperwork, thinking it'll all sort itself out. But then they find out they're not eligible for forgiveness because they missed a deadline or didn't submit required documentation.
That's a really good point. I can see how that would be frustrating. Do you have any examples of this kind of situation?
Sure. I had a client, let's call her Sarah. She thought she was on track for public service loan forgiveness. She had been working in a nonprofit for over 10 years. But when we dug into her records, we found out she hadn't been submitting the right documentation every year.
Oh, no. So what happened?
Well, she ended up missing out on several years of qualifying payments. It was a tough conversation because she had been counting on that forgiveness. It was a classic case of not staying organized and not being proactive.
That sounds so disheartening. What could she have done differently to avoid that?
Keeping a clear record of her payments and the required documents would have been key. Setting reminders for when to submit forms, or even just checking in with her loan servicer regularly, could have made a big difference.
Yeah, I can see how that would help. So, what about another common mistake?
Another one is assuming that all loans are eligible for forgiveness. Some borrowers think that if they're in a forgiveness program, all their loans qualify. But that's not always the case.
Right. Like federal versus private loans, right?
Exactly. I had another client, let's call him Mike. He had a mix of federal and private loans. He was excited about forgiveness, but didn't realize that his private loans wouldn't qualify at all. He was banking on that and ended up feeling really let down.
That's frustrating. So knowing the type of loans you have is crucial.
Yes, and it's also important to understand which repayment plans qualify for forgiveness. Many people don't realize that switching repayment plans can affect their eligibility or the number of qualifying payments they've made.
That makes sense. Are there any signs that someone might be heading down the wrong path with their loans?
Definitely. One big warning sign is if you're not sure who your loan servicer is, or if you've lost track of your payments. That's a red flag. Another sign is if you're feeling overwhelmed or confused about the forgiveness process.
So if someone feels lost, that's a cue to seek help, right?
Exactly. It's always better to ask questions and get clarity than to just hope everything will work out. There are resources available, like financial advisors, nonprofit credit counselors, or even community organizations that can help.
That's great advice. And I guess it's important to stay informed about changes in the programs too, right?
Yes, the rules can change, and new opportunities can arise. I've seen people who keep themselves updated through newsletters or reliable websites. They're usually in a much better position to take advantage of those changes.
So what would be a practical step for someone listening who might feel a little lost or unsure about their loans?
A good first step would be to gather all their loan information, know what kind of loans they have, who their servicer is, and what repayment plan they're on. Then, they should consider setting up a meeting with a financial advisor who understands student loans.
That sounds doable, and it could really help clarify their situation.
Definitely. Taking control of the situation is empowering. And if they find they're in a tricky spot, there are usually options to explore, like loan consolidation or even income-driven repayment plans.
Yeah, it's all about knowing what's available and what works for them. So, if someone realizes they've made a mistake, is it too late to recover?
Not at all. Many mistakes can be corrected, especially if they act quickly. For example, If someone realizes they haven't been submitting their annual certification for income-driven plans, they can still submit it retroactively.
That's a relief to hear. It's like there's always a chance to get back on track.
Exactly. And it's never too late to learn. The key is to stay engaged with the process and not be afraid to ask for help when needed.
So, Alex, before we wrap up, what would you say is a final thought for those navigating this student loan landscape?
Just remember, being proactive is crucial. Regularly check in on your loans, keep your records organized, and don't hesitate to reach out for help if things get confusing.
That's such solid advice. And with that foundation, listeners can move forward with confidence.
Right. And it leads us into the next steps they can take to ensure they're on the right path with their student loans.
All right, so let's dive into some immediate steps listeners can take if they're navigating the student loan forgiveness landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I'd recommend is to check your eligibility. There are different forgiveness programs out there, and each has its own criteria.
Right, so how would someone go about doing that?
Start by visiting the official federal student aid website. It's a reliable source for information on various forgiveness programs, like public service loan forgiveness or teacher loan forgiveness.
And that's a great point because those programs can make a huge difference for folks in certain jobs, right?
Exactly. Once you're on the site, you can also see if your loans are eligible. If you're not sure about your loan type, that's a critical first step.
So if they find out they qualify, what's next?
Well, the next step is to gather all necessary documents. You'll want to have your loan information, employment details, and any tax documents handy.
Yeah, having everything organized can really save time and stress, huh?
Definitely. I suggest creating a dedicated folder, either digital or physical, where you can keep all your important documents related to your student loans.
That makes it so much easier to access everything when you need it.
For sure. And once you've got your documents in order, consider reaching out to your loan servicer. They can help clarify any questions you have about the application process for forgiveness.
Speaking of loan servicers, how can someone find out who theirs is?
You can find your loan servicer by logging into your account on the Federal Student Aid website. It'll show you all your loans and the servicer associated with each one.
That's super helpful. Now, what about people who might feel overwhelmed by the idea of applying?
Great question. I'd recommend breaking it down into smaller tasks. For example, set a goal to complete one part of the application each week.
That's a smart strategy. It makes the whole process feel less daunting.
Exactly. And maybe even consider using an app or a budgeting tool to keep track of your progress and deadlines.
Are there specific apps you think work well for this?
Yes, there are a few. Apps like Mint or YNAB can help manage your overall finances, but there are also apps specifically for student loans like Student Loan Hero. They can help you track payments and set reminders for important deadlines.
That's useful. Keeping everything organized is key, especially with the changes in forgiveness policies.
Absolutely. And another habit to build is regularly checking for updates on student loan policies.
Right, because things can change quickly, and you want to be in the know.
Exactly. Set a reminder to check in, maybe once a month, so you can stay informed about any changes that could affect your loans.
And if someone is still in the repayment phase, what should they be doing now?
Well, if you're currently making payments, consider looking into income-driven repayment plans. They can lower your monthly payments based on your income.
That's a good point. Sometimes people don't realize they might qualify for reduced payments.
Yep. And remember, if you're in a financial pinch, reaching out to your servicer to discuss deferment or forbearance options might be necessary. But it's important to understand the long-term implications of those choices.
Definitely. It's good to know there are options, but you want to be careful not to extend your debt unnecessarily.
Right. And for those who are just starting to think about their loans, maybe even before they graduate, it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with your loan terms.
That's a proactive approach. Understanding the details up front can really help avoid surprises later on.
Exactly. And if you're still in school, look into scholarships or grants as a way to minimize future debt.
That's a great strategy. The less debt you have going into your career, the better off you'll be.
For sure. And don't forget about financial literacy resources. There are books, podcasts, and online courses focused on managing student loans and personal finance in general.
Any recommendations on books or resources that you think could be beneficial?
The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey is a classic for personal finance, and it has great insights on debt management.
I've heard good things about that one.
Another one is You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. It's a bit more motivational while still providing practical tips.
I love that. It's always nice to have a mix of motivation and actionable advice.
Exactly. And if you're more of a visual learner, there are plenty of YouTube channels dedicated to personal finance that can provide insights into managing loans and building wealth.
So it sounds like there are tons of resources out there, whether you prefer reading, watching, or listening.
Absolutely. The key is to take that first step, whatever it is, and build a habit of being informed and proactive about your finances.
I love that. It really empowers you to take control of your financial future.
And remember, it's also about community. Reach out to friends or family who might be going through similar situations. Sharing experiences can often provide not just support, but also new insights.
So true. Having a support system can make a big difference in navigating these challenges.
Yeah, so those are some immediate steps you can take. Now let's bring everything together.
So let's take a moment to recap some of the key points we covered about student loan forgiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, we talked about how the recent changes to forgiveness programs are really making it easier for borrowers, especially those who qualify for income-driven repayment plans.
Right, and it's important to remember that a lot of people might not even know they could qualify. Knowledge is power here, folks.
Exactly. And then there's the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. It's crucial for anyone in public service roles to understand the eligibility criteria and the steps they need to take.
Not to mention the importance of keeping track of your loans and staying updated on the status of your applications. Things can change, so it's worth checking in regularly.
Definitely. And let's not forget about the option for consolidation, which can simplify managing those loans if you have multiple.
All of these updates can feel a bit overwhelming, but they're designed to help you navigate your financial future more smoothly. Remember, it's all about taking those small steps toward financial freedom.
Well said, Jordan. Staying informed and proactive can really make a difference in your financial journey.
And speaking of journeys, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with your thoughts. Sharing this with someone who might benefit, especially if they're over 40, can really help them too.
Absolutely. And next time, we're diving into something that can be super rewarding. Credit card rewards mastery.
Yeah, we'll explore how to make the most of credit card perks without falling into common traps.
It's going to be a great discussion.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you found value in our conversation, and we can't wait to see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.